Sophie Thompson is a landscape architect and head of public realm at LDA Design. As well as landscape architecture, LDA's areas of work include master planning, environmental planning, and biodiversity. So Sophie, you're involved with the West End project, which surrounds the NLA. It's a very welcome scheme for the area that removes the Tottenham Court Road, Gower Street gyratory, improves condition for walking and cycling, as well as creating new public spaces. How's that going as a project?
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, it's going really well. Actually, in fact, we only just opened Whitfield Gardens, which is the first public space to be opened as part of the West End project last week. And that's a garden space in an urban square, which a lot of people probably know because it sits off the heels on Tottenham Court Road. So it's in a very prominent location. And that started in construction. It's actually at the start of lockdown. So it's been very interesting times. So we've put in new long table dining. There's pop-up power community events now. The Fitzrovia mural's been refurbished, lots of new biodiverse plantings. So it's great. And it does feel like now more than ever, these high quality green spaces in London are really important. And then the next space to start on site, which actually starts next week, which is a project you'll know well, Peter, because it sits opposite the NLA on Store Street, which is Alfred Place, which closes Alfred Place through traffic. And creates a new linear park there. Then following that, we've got 4 pocket parks starting kind of later in the year off Tottenham Court Road. And then we're just finishing the construction package for Prince's Circus, which is a space which is the south of New Oxford Street, closing part of Shaftesbury Avenue and Bloomsbury Street to traffic and creating an amazing new square. So that's due on site in spring next year. So it's all happening and the traffic changes are slowly happening as well. So High Holborn is closed to traffic now, in part to in terms of it's now 2-way rather than the 1-way system. So it's great. No, it's really good.
And it's a transformational project, really, which seemed pretty radical when it was first conceived several years ago. So with all the changes that have taken place to street space as a result of COVID-19, do you think this sort of transformation will be easier in the future?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually, because I mean, yes and no, I think. Yes, I think certainly projects like this and a lot of the Safer Streets sort of temporary projects that have come in have proved that actually these streets can change. You can take traffic off or reassign space, and actually the world still keeps moving, and everything works, and there's less kind of people are accepting of these and actually appreciating clean air and able to walk and cycle. And I know certainly the City of London have reported that about 50% of their temporary schemes they think are going to remain permanent, which is great. So it's changed streets, I think, as kind of public spaces rather than just places to move through, which is really interesting. But I am concerned that obviously a lot of the projects rely on money from Transport for London, and their revenues are hugely constrained at the moment in terms of people's lack of use of public transport because of the pandemic. So projects like a lot of the Livable Neighbourhoods projects, well, all of them went on hold at the start of this. So we're working on the Holborn gyratory, which is similar in ambition to the West End project. That went on hold. And I'm also concerned as well in the outer London boroughs about increasing car use. And it concerns me because to achieve the kind of zero carbon goals that we're all wanting to get to, it really requires radical change to the way we plan our cities and towns, not just kind of tinkering. So yeah, it's an interesting question.
So, but there are other quite big projects on the horizon, and LDA is also involved with the changes in the Aldwych area, which is, again, pretty transformational. When do you think that might be delivered?
Yeah, wow, the Strand Aldwych is an extraordinary project for London. It's really ambitious. We're working with Westminster and stakeholders on that. And the first phase, which is the removal of the one-way system, the gyratory to the Old Witch, to replace it for two-way, is actually due to start planned. You know, the intent is that that starts next year for construction, and that creates wider pavements, new generous crossings. There's a pocket plaza to the south of Drury Lane and a lovely new public space outside St Clement Danes Church. And another part of that project is actually the closure of the Strand. So again, a really significant place outside Somerset House and King's College London, and that's reconceiving that as a really different type of public space for London, with outside work areas, performance space, again, long table dining. But we're currently looking at a meanwhile phase to test the ideas for that. So yeah, that's all sort of, you know, still you know, under design development and imminent.
Very good. And also working on Thamesmead, which is one of London's largest regeneration projects at the moment, I think, isn't it? So tell me what you're doing there.
Yeah, indeed. We've been working with Peabody and a broad range of experts, ranging from hydrologists to economists, and we're developing a landscape and green infrastructure vision and framework for Thamesmead called Living in the Landscape. And it's a vision for Thamesmead to 2050. Thamesmead's population is actually due to double by 2050, from 50,000 to 100,000. So it's going to be undergoing really, really significant changes, that whole area. The framework launches actually this month, and what we've been developing is this vision for Thamesmead as being one of the greenest and most inclusive places to live. So, I mean, it's got a really interesting history. It was this 1960s modernist utopian vision for living in nature. You know, these concrete towers, and there was, you know, marshes were canalized, lakes created. People were imagining pulling around there. But unfortunately, in the 1960s, connectivity also meant significant dual carriageways and streets for people in the sky. And actually now only about 20% of people use the green space that they've got. So whilst there's a lot of it, weekly or more. So there's a huge job to do there about reconnecting people and nature in this really landscape-led approach to that. And sea levels are rising in the Thames estuary with the climate crisis. So, you know, there's a need for flood defence and doing that in a very, very different way. So it's about cleaning the lakes, creating a wilder Thamesmead, this biodiverse mosaic of habitats, you know, activity, growing foods. So, you know, it's a really, again, a really, really ambitious project. And this is due to guide the sort of development that's happening at the moment in the area. And Lendlease, for instance, have partnered with Peabody and are planning on, you know, sort of, again, a really, really exciting, ambitious redevelopment for, you know, so for one of the first phases. And I think it's about 11,000 new homes planned as part of that first phase. So yeah, it's another fantastic project we're involved in, but it's very different in terms of, you know, it's really about, you know, big picture thinking and a really ambitious vision for a different way of life, and you know, a really positive future for, you know, for people living and working there.
Yes, but a very exciting project, but of course it needs the Elizabeth line to connect it so that we don't fall into the same issues as we did before. So Sophie, thank you very much for discussing your projects with me, and very interesting to hear how you're changing public space in London for the better.
Thanks, Peter. It's been an absolute pleasure.